Do you know that Gen Z is the first generation in like 100 years to actually tick the other direction in terms of conservative or liberal?
Yeah, of course they are. That's not a surprise at all. I mean, you look at the kind of wreckage that started with the baby boomers and has kind of now echoing down. They say, I don't want to do that.
But it's not ideological. So the Pew Research shows that Gen Z is about as progressive as millennials, but slightly more conservative in some areas. So when you'll see these stories, and it's funny, I think the way Pew framed it was Gen Z is just as progressive as millennials or whatever. And then you look and it's like, they are. Oh, a little bit more conservative. Oh, a little bit more conservative. That's interesting. I think that's the framing you should go with, that there's something that happened that's very different. It used to be every generation was way more progressive. And now it's stagnant and slightly receding. And so I remember when I saw this research and I was like, I wonder what's causing Gen Z to start rejecting these ideas. There's nothing. You want to know why Gen Z is slightly more conservative? In the late 90s and early 2000s, several researchers were talking about birth rates between ideologies and found that liberal couples were having 1.7 kids on average versus conservatives 2.01, which meant that in 20 years, you would have a generation that was slightly more conservative than the last because liberals are less likely to have kids and now more likely to, say, get an abortion. This resulted in the Gen Z being slightly more conservative simply because there are more of them.
I wonder what the correlation, though, is on political ideology between parents and children. It's strong enough to make a difference, is what you're suggesting.
I think it's progressive to be a Republican right now.
I mean,
it's progressive to vote for Trump anyway.
The general idea is to look at it from a very simple point of view.
Yeah.
That if conservatives have more kids, they'll have kids with more conservative values. Though the kids are pretty woke compared to millennials, like they're pretty comparable, so they're less conservative than their parents. There's more kids who have somewhat conservative values. It's a generational anomaly. Now we can take a look at some of the more, the changes that have been occurring. I mean, when I was growing up, the Democratic Party, when talking about pro-life versus pro-choice, it was safe, legal, but rare. Mm-hmm. Now it's Michelle Wolf on Netflix going, you get an abortion and you get an abortion.
The selfie videos. Have you seen those?
Whoa, no.
Oh, yeah. There's like women. There's like a trend on social media a while back where, immediately after having an abortion procedure, people would, take selfie videos and celebrate it like like they just won the Olympics or something. It's like now it's really kind of, even I kind of grew up in California. I was pro-choice by default. And then you kind of watch this stuff and you say, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
You see Lena Dunham said she wished she had an abortion.
Did she have children?
Can you pull?
I can pull that up for you.
Yeah, Google
Did
it.
she have children?
I'm pretty sure it was her. I want to make sure we get the source on
Oh,
this
she
one.
wished she had one so she
Yes.
could be part of the club?
She wished she had had an abortion. She doesn't have any kids.
Okay.
I think wishing.
Could you say that about your kid? I had a kid, but I wish I aborted. No. She was straight up saying she wished at some point. So not to get too much into that, but the point I'm making is we recently had Joe Biden say that there should be no discrimination if an 8-year-old chooses to be transgender. There's an interesting thing there in the way he said chooses, because I didn't realize that was a choice. And there's something interesting about what is going to be happening to future generations. And I'm not saying this to disparage anybody. I'm just saying, based on scientific fact, that there are going to be people who are having substantially more abortions. There are a wave of millennials who are getting vasectomies or sterilization, tube ties or whatever. And there are
millennials, like people that are getting their two types before marriage or before kids.
Absolutely.
I'm done.
I know someone who cauterized her fallopian tubes or whatever.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And she's like in her late 20s.
Awful.
Cauterized, saying irreversible, destroy it. So what's going to happen based on that previous trend? Like what happened to the next generation? Substantially more conservative?
Dude.
I got it. 2016, December 20th, Lena Dunham wishes she had an abortion.
Disgusting.
I think
Wow.
celebrating necessary evils is not the way to go with evil.
I would say so. Yeah, that seems fair.
Yeah, it's a social status kind of a symbol, right? That seems
She
so
said-
rare.
she said-
Yeah.
Quote, now I
Strange.
can say that I still haven't had an abortion, but I wish I had.
Dude,
What kind of psychotic depravity is this? Even if your argument is... So this is pro-abortion. I always tell people, I'm like, the argument right now isn't pro-choice versus pro-life. The pro-choicers are aligning with the pro-lifers reluctantly because it's pro-abortion versus pro-life.
Yeah.
This was 2016 she said this. And you had that Michelle Wolf special on Netflix where she's yelling, you get an abortion, you get an abortion.
Right. No
Like-
one's pro-abortion. People are
No,
pro-choice. You're not
No,
supposed to
no,
be
no, no.
pro-abortion.
You're
That's
not supposed to be.
ridiculous.
It's
Yeah.
supposed to be that way, but clearly it's not the case.
Oh, man.
I'm not trying to get into this big pro-life, pro-choice thing. I'm just pointing out
Hurts a little.
the left has gone insane. It's not just critical race theory. It's something, I don't know what,
Dude,
but it's going to be it's going to have a profound impact on future generations.
Tell me if this makes sense. So critical race theorists would say, like, you want people to be a mixed race couple because it promotes,
No,
you would
no,
think
no.
that
How
you
dare
would
you?
think that progressive-
Fetishizing?
You would
No.
think that
Fetish-
you would want people to come
No.
together. If that's
No.
the idea,
I mean,
is you're creating equality.
The
you want
Supreme
people
Court
of all
Justice
kinds
Amy
to get
Coney
married.
Barrett adopted 2 children from Haiti. Children that were, one of them was severely disabled. I mean, if you're an orphanage in Haiti, which is a poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, you're in a bad place.
Right.
And she adopted them, raised them, giving them tons of opportunity. And the critical race theory kind of guru of the day, who's kind of
Ibram.
a big
Ibram,
Kendi,
yeah.
said, this is kind of the mark of a white colonizer oppressing black children as kind of this, and it's like, I mean, you can say, hey, look, there's a perfectly reasonable argument to be made. Kind of, I guess
He
like,
said something
kind of-
about taming the savage, like some totally
What- it was
brutally
way out of
offensive-
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, and interracial marriage is again kind of like a bomb thrown into their narrative because it's very complex. So I out of all the dumb stories that are around there, I broke a story about the King County, Washington Library holding racially segregated training programs. And someone leaked to me these amazing photos of signs on 2 doors, opposite doors. One said, training for people
White.
of color, training for people who are white.
Yeah.
And then it's like interracial couples, like my kids are mixed race, biracial. Like, Dad, where do I go? Am I a person of color? Am I a white person? My wife and I, are we going to go in separate rooms to be trained
Apparently.
to kind of deconstruct ourselves and learn how to kind of, despise each other for these hidden essences that are more important than even a marriage? I think that there's 2 things that critical race theorists drives them crazy. One is interracial marriage. And I think interracial marriage is a sign of progress,
Of
frankly.
course.
Heck yeah.
Like, I think it's beautiful.
Like,
I think it's amazing.
scientifically, consciously.
Whoever you love, go for it, But I think also America is going to look very different in 100 years. You're not going to be able to tell you're black, you're white, you're Hispanic, you're Puerto Rican, whatever. It's going to be very complex, and I think ultimately that's going to be good. I mean, I'm Italian. My father's an immigrant from Italy.
Oh, cool.
Italian people weren't considered white
Right.
for a long
Yeah.
time. I think the same thing will happen. It'll be a process of evolution as people kind of adapt, accommodate, and intermarry. But they don't like that, and they also really hate Asian Americans.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, the hatred towards Asian
know.
Americans is so extreme because Asian Americans, who are people of color, have the highest rates of college education. They have the highest incomes. They have the highest test scores. So in a society that is supposedly white supremacist, when you look at the income tables by ethnicity, Indian Americans are at the very top. They have
know.
70% college degrees.
Rocking it.
Indian Americans, Filipinos, Koreans, Taiwanese, all of these groups, and then white Americans are somewhere in the middle, and it's like it destroys the narrative. And I call Asian Americans the inconvenient minority.
Well, they've
because they just can't deal with it.
Right.
they've tried to find a way. I was in Seattle at University of Washington. There was like a Proud Boy event happening a couple years ago, and there was a guy who was arguing with people. I started talking to him, and I explained that when he started saying all this critical race theory stuff, I said that's not cool. Here's why. And then it's always funny when their opinions change once they realize. Like for me, I'm part Asian, and so what the guy said to me was amazing. That white supremacists have long tried to mix with Asians. That's why they had World War II and the Japanese were on the side of the Germans.
Whoa.
And I started laughing and I was like, are you insane?
What does that
Take.
even mean?
Does
Yeah.
it mean
He
anything?
tried basically saying the justification for why Asians are, bad or whatever is you look at World War II and the Germans. And then, of course, there was this whole period where the left tried explaining why it was that there were right-wing people who had Asian wives. And they said it's because, the Nazis and Japan and the white supremacists want demure, timid traditional wives or
Which,
whatever.
I mean, you said you're Korean. Like, I know
Yeah.
a lot of Korean mothers. Like, they are not demure
Nope.
or
No.
timid. They're intense, dude.
Quite
Yeah,
the
they're
opposite.
crazy. Like, they are anything but. It's like, where did this stereotype come from?
Tiger
It's
it's just
completely ridiculous.
it's an attempt to
Yeah.
lie, to make up this
Yeah.
ridiculous narrative to justify
The
why it
kind
is
of-
they're
yeah,
wrong.
Yeah. I'll tell you a cool story that happened and something that I thought was really inspirational to me in Washington State, where I live. They were trying to basically reinstate there was a ban on race-based college admissions, right? You have to admit people based on their test scores and their accomplishments. You can't look at race in admissions. And consequently, and if you look at the social science data, it's, I think, highly correlated with the number of hours per week that they're studying. Asian Americans do really well. They get college admissions at the highest kind of public universities in
course.
Washington State. They dominate. That's just a fact. It is what it is. And the progressives, I guess now a year ago, 2 years ago, I can't quite remember, they said, we're going to get rid of that and we're going to reinstate race-based admissions. And again, Washington State has a high Asian American population. These are people who had never been involved in politics. We come from, in large cases, these are Chinese Americans. They said, we come from a place where politics is dangerous. It'll get you killed. So we're just here to focus on our families, focus on education, focus on working hard, focus on businesses. And I got involved with these people in this campaign to stop this. And you know what happened was really a remarkable testament to American democracy. These first generation Asian American immigrants, literally noodle shop owners, computer people, someone that said that they were, transporting frozen meat. I mean, like people who work hard. They came together. They had some people kind of advise them. They put together a campaign to collect signatures to get this thing out of there, because they said, hey, wait a minute. We come from this country. We come to this country. We work hard. We send our kids to college. That's how it works. This is the American dream. And these folks are trying to take us away from it to help minorities. What that doesn't even make sense. And they laughed at them. The legislators literally mocked them in public.
Wow.
Noodle shop owners will never put this thing together. Ha ha ha. We have power. This is a blue state. We're going to dominate. Wow. The noodle shop owners,
Oh boy.
they went crazy. They organized. They hustled. They got donations. They got small donors. The corporations all donated against them.
Wow.
The people called them white supremacists, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
These Asian white supremacists, noodle shop owners, and they won by 2 points.
Wow.
The first time in Washington State history that a ethnic minority group ran a ballot measure and won, and hats off to them.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.